Here we are. We did it.
Hey, all right, good for us.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sunny Wilkinson, and this is the second show of Lighten Up with Sunny Wilkinson. And for an exactly punctual person, the fact that I got on Facebook Live 2 minutes late.
Off with your head.
Yeah, it's that technology. Welcome, welcome. I cannot wait to introduce you to my guest for today. But before I do, I want to share with you a lovely new concept that came to me in the middle of a sleepless night. You know, when your brain turns on and everything's activated, and it's not necessarily bad, but it is certainly zooming. Um, some of you know that I have been an avid hobbyist potter for the past 7 years. So much so that I gutted my son's bedroom. Sorry, Chris, he's married and off in Salt Lake City, and built a studio, took out the carpet, painted the walls light, got perfect lighting, and have my 1974 Shimpo wheel to keep me company in all of its noisiness. So the point of all that is that we have so many remarkable artists in Michigan in all the genres. And there is no way that I can possibly interview all the potters, all the musicians. But I thought it would be lovely to pay tribute to some of my mentors and teachers and some of the great world-class potters we have in the area. So at the beginning of every show, I'm going to show a piece of work. And today, the first time out, is my dear friend and my mentor through thick and thin, Pamela Timmons. I'd like to show you a couple of her pieces. Note how lovely they are with my color scheme. Isn't she beautiful? Look at the fluid lines. Look at how it's definitely got a structure and a form, but look at how the edges are flowing. Isn't that just beautiful? One other little piece of her work, Pamela Timmons, you can go to her website and check her out. And she does some of these abstract, it's called slip trailing, playing in clay, writing in clay. So Pamela, here's your tribute today. Mwah! Ellen Rowe is my guest today. And I'm just going to read a few things about her because she is too modest and she won't say them about herself. She is jazz pianist and composer. And tell me if I pronounce this wrong, Ellen. Currently the Arthur F. Thurnow,
That's it.
Thurnow Professor, a big honor, Professor of Jazz and Contemporary Improvisation at the University of Michigan. She is the former head of jazz studies at UConn and U of M. And she is an extraordinary composer and arranger, extreme athlete, in my opinion. Before we get too much into our chatting, I wanted to tell you some of the people that she has written arrangements for. Been performed and recorded by jazz ensembles and orchestras around the world, including, check this out, the Village Vanguard Orchestra, the BBC Jazz Orchestra, the US Navy Commodores, Berlin and NDR Radio Jazz Orchestra, London Symphony, Diva, and the Perth Jazz Orchestra. Ellen Rowe, welcome, my dear friend.
Thank you so much for having me on, Sunny. This is just going to be so much fun. I really appreciate it. Looking forward to it.
I know. Well, we have been friends for, what, 25 years, I think?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, 25 years. So we have done Sisters in Jazz together. Well, you tell me. Tell me some of the things we've done and share with our audience.
Well, I still struggle to remember exactly where we met, but I suspect it was an IAJE conference, right? Or was it even NAJE back then? I think it was IAJE.
I remember exact moment when I met you.
Okay, good.
I heard so much about you. I walked up to you and shook your hand at an IAJE convention.
Yeah.
Just one of those little moments that I remember. I'm not sure which year, maybe 94?
That could be right. That would be about 2 years before I moved out here. And so yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
right. Because then when I got out here, we were able to actually start working together on Sisters in Jazz, and then all the many other things that we've done together since then, including playing together, writing music together. Sunny, by the way, for those of you who don't know, is a wonderful lyricist. So if you are ever in need of lyrics for one of your pieces, she is a good woman to turn to. And then, of course, we've had you at U of M doing vocal jazz master classes. We did our Art of the Duo. That is something I really hope we can resurrect, because that was so much fun, especially when we got to go to Maiori, Italy, and do it on the Amalfi Coast. That was pretty slick.
I just flashing back to that remarkable place,
Mm-hmm.
getting up, having our cappuccino every morning, walking down to thankfully our air-conditioned place, lodging,
Yeah.
and you running. Oh my God.
Trying to run in that heat, and there was no way out of Maiori except to go up like 1,000 stone steps. So it was quite a workout.
I can't. I trudged my way up to the top. I was sweating profusely. It took me an hour and a half, and you're blithely flying by, running the trails.
Flying by, but trudging maybe at a slightly quicker tempo.
Trudging, yeah. So I loved our concept for that, the art of the duo,
Mm-hmm.
right? The beautiful intimacy that takes place between singer and piano player when they're capable enough of that extraordinary back and forth
Mm-hmm.
of rubato and communication.
Yes, yes, it's really it was so interesting to have to think about. I mean, I think at this point, we do things intuitively, which is wonderful, but to try to talk with these young people about how does rubato work? I mean, how do you do that? And to come up with these beautiful recordings of people we love as use as demonstrations, and it was really wonderful. Plus, we had some really remarkable young people with us in that trip.
Oh,
So
we really did.
that was
A
a
lot of them are in New York performing and in Detroit performing. Oh, by the way, just for those of you that are not musicians, rubato means that the time is, it's not exactly out of time, but it is out of time. The time is fluid and it sort of goes back and forth. It's sort of, uh, Ellen would Ellen would take the lead on a phrase and then I'd take the lead on the phrase, and we're influenced in the time by each other.
Mhm. Nicely put.
Thank you.
Probably the big bucks.
Yeah, yeah, that was pretty remarkable. And then we also do, honestly, some of my favorite lyrics that I've written to your tunes.
Well, those have been incredibly special. Like Charlie's tune, oh man. Every time we do that, I'm crying. I know the lyrics are coming. I still can't help myself.
Would you tell them about that?
Oh gosh, sure. So one of our very favorite drummers is Pete Sears, who lives here in Ann Arbor. And when they had their first child, they now have two. In fact, they're all grown up. It's quite remarkable. I think Neva's on her way to college, if not there already. Um, when they had their first boy, I decided it'd be nice to write a tune in his honor, and his name was Charlie. So I wrote Charlie's tune for them, and they were so sweet. They took the original music and put it in a frame and put it over his crib and the whole thing. It was on their wall. So, and then I remember that soon afterwards, I can't remember exactly how long afterwards. It may have actually been some years after we were doing a performance at Carytown, and they were sitting in the front row, and you sang that, and just tears everywhere. It was just because you wrote such lovely lyrics that talked about Charlie and how sweet he was, and it was just perfect. But we barely got through that, is what I remember.
I know. I still love that tune. It's beautiful. We're a good team, Mama. We are. Well, we had Ellen and Ted over for dinner, socially distanced salmon dinner with a little bit of cilantro pesto. It was pretty good, right?
To die for.
I know, to die for. And we were talking about your love of animals and your advocacy for the animal rights groups. And we got to talking about the loons in Maine. I would love it if you would share about the loons with our audience.
Sure. The problem is for me not to take up the rest of our 45 minutes
Yeah.
talking. So my family has been blessed to have been able to have a cabin up in Maine for the last 60 years. I don't know, my father somehow on his band director income when he was growing up, and he was also a church organist, was able to build a small cabin, and we were able to get the right of way to the lake that it was basically on. And we have a dock and some boats, and but it's a beautiful wild lake. It's been there's houses on it, but a lot of land has been protected. Stephen King has a summer place up there, and he has done a lot to protect all the shore. And he has given so much money to the community there. I just have to mention that because he really is amazing what he and his foundation have done. And they have contributed money to the Loon Preservation Society. So loons are fairly common throughout the northern section of the country, but they are struggling a little bit, especially in Maine. And I'm not sure if it's in other lakes in other parts of the country, but there's lead stinkers in the water from fishing that they swallow. They've got now bald eagles have come back, so the chicks have predators. And anyway, so they're not quite endangered, but they're on the, I'd say maybe threatened, or we're worried about them. So there's a Loon Preservation Society with some loon experts, one of whom lives on our lake. And there's been a real push to try to monitor all the loons that are building nests, follow their chicks, see what can be done to try to help them. And we had a lovely pair that came into our cove last year and tried to nest. And unfortunately, predators got their eggs, so they tried to nest again, and the same thing happened again. So that was incredibly sad. I actually found one of the eggs in the woods and was told to put it back in the nest, so I did. And the loons came and sat back on the nest, but unfortunately it didn't pan out. But this year they came back, and I can realize I am rambling here, so I will sort of tie it up a little bit. The loons came back, and this time they tried to nest right by the swimming beach in the cove. And besides being a terrible location, unfortunately predators got to the nest again, so they lost that batch. But they did not give up. They came over and went back to their old spot, where the loon preservation people had very thoughtfully built this lovely floating loon nest. So it was out in the water, a little bit away from where they had, previously nested. Beautiful nest. I mean, if I were a loon, I would nest there. Nest there if I wasn't a loon. It was so nice. But the loons would have nothing to do with it. So they built a new nest, and sure enough, the first egg got predated, I think, by a raccoon. So then they tried to take a snow shovel, the loon experts tried to take a snow shovel while the loons were there, move the nest onto the floating raft, and the loons watched it happen. They swam around, they were very upset, and they swam off. And that was, they weren't having anything to do with it. So they took the snow shovel and put the nest back where it was, and the loons came and got back up. The last couple things the loon volunteers did was build a fence around the nest, which really made a lot of sense to protect it from the predators. And the loons sat there and sat there and sat there. They had their eggs. The floodwaters started to rise when it rained a whole bunch. The loon volunteers came over and started throwing like mud and nesting materials at the loons because their nest was about to go under the water line. And the loons used all that material and built the nest up. But the unfortunate end is that for whatever reasons, the last egg was not viable. And those poor loons just gave up yesterday. They should have had their egg. It should have hatched at the end of July. They sat in the nest all through August, trying. So, like I said, I was so invested in them when I was up in Maine for 2 weeks. I was taking all the data down for the preservation folks and entering it into a database and watching them 4 or 5 times a day just to see what was going on. But they were called the loon expert. This is the last thing I'll say. The loon expert said, and the name of our cove is Vitten's Cove. He said the loons of Vitten's Cove are rock stars for hanging in there as long as they did and trying desperately to get that egg to hatch. So anyway, that's my loon story.
Talk about tenacity.
Yes.
Doesn't that teach you some lessons about life?
Well, and it does. And the thing that happened is actually after the floodwaters went down and down and down and down, suddenly their nest was, way, way up off the water. And loons can't walk on land. They don't have that ability. So I would watch them struggle, like use their wings to try to drag themselves up onto the nest. It was very touching.
Wow.
There's a tune. I am going to write a tune.
There's definitely a tune in there.
Loons of Vitten's Cove. It's going to be.
Oh, I love that. I'd like a stab at it.
Sure.
Before we go on to your music, there's one other there's so many remarkable things about you, my friend.
No, that's doubtful, but thank you.
So those of us that pursue physical activity on a daily basis, healthy, I ride my bike maybe 10 miles, But you, Missy, you run 100-kilometer races.
Yeah, they put the word races in.
Crazy, crazy woman in parentheses. Tell them how many miles that is in case somebody's not figuring.
It's about 62, and there is certainly walking involved and aid stations where you get to rest and put on new shoes or do whatever you're going to do. I mean, so you're not running constantly for, 16 hours or whatever it takes. But
Yes, you are.
I was I had to do a fair amount of walking because I had had a bee sting like a week earlier and my whole leg had swollen up. So, but yeah, and actually that's I love the challenge of it mostly. Just and you understand this perfectly. I just love being outdoors, and the people that run those ultra marathons. And an ultra can be anything from 26 to, I mean, there's now ultras that are like 500 miles. I mean, they're just, it's nuts. It's really, really, what I do is nothing compared to what some of these other people are doing. But the people who run them are wonderful. The trail running community is remarkable. And you just get to be outside for hours at a time, moving through nature. It's really special. And you had asked about any special sayings or mantras. And one of my mantras, which was the name of the tune on my last album, is relentless forward progress. And it's the name of a book about ultra running, and it's great. I mean, it's what you have to remind yourself when you're at mile 50 and you don't know how you can move forwards anymore, and you just remind yourself that relentless forward progress is just putting one foot in front of the other. And for me, there's so many times in just daily life, especially with what we're going through now, where that really resonates. It's just that in front of the other, and that's how you get through the ultras, and that's how you can kind of get through life.
My friend Kathy Siegel Garcia, who actually inspired this show, is one of these remarkable achievers. She's always got a record. She's like you. And I said, how do you do that? She says, I just put one foot in front of the other and you learn as you go.
Yeah.
And my sister, who is an elementary school teacher in music, has this great song, and I'm going to screw it up, but it goes, you got to put one foot in front of the other and go with love. Just put one foot in front of the other. It's kind of true, right?
It is. Yeah.
Do you find that your being an athlete of this stature affects your music and the way you perceive it and the way you approach it?
That's a really great question. I think there's something about the discipline involved in trying to stay in shape and do the training and get through those races that I think applies to anything we do. So, as I used to say that, if you can run 50 miles at one time, suddenly loading the dishwasher doesn't seem like such a big deal. But,
or mowing the lawn.
mowing the lawn, which I know you are just starting to love as much as I do. But yeah, no, there's a certain tenacity and I mean, I think there's a certain self-awareness and sense of fulfillment that you get when you are out there. I mean, I did a 12-mile run on Sunday and we're all struggling through this time because of the chaos and the anarchy in our lives and just the uncertainty of what's going to happen. And those of us who are trying to go back to teaching, having to get all these new skills together to try to teach online, which is, we don't need to go there, but just to have all that anxiety and go out and run and see some birds and meet some nice people or whatever, and come back and suddenly your perspective is completely, 180. So it definitely has a positive effect in that sense.
I love that. I love that. I find that when I'm stressed, I don't breathe.
Yeah.
I'm a singer. I'm a good breather, but I just stop breathing and everything gets narrow and boxed in. And if I get in and do some yoga or I go ride my bike and I open everything back up, it's the same thing. You have a different perspective. It calms you. It centers you. That's a pottery term. It centers you,
Mm-hmm.
but it really does.
It absolutely does, and it's funny because because I'm feeling so stressed these days. I'm trying to meditate for 15 or 20 minutes every morning. I've actually done 6 in a row now, so I'm very proud of myself. 6 days in a row. But the whole point of that is to focus on the breath. But I can go through my day in the afternoon and still I can't bring that back yet. That's my next step is to be able to go. Oh yes, right, breathing.
Even when I teach my students, no matter how advanced they are, especially right now, connecting through Zoom instead of through seeing each other and the intimacy that that entails,
Mhm.
the first thing we do is breathe,
See,
right?
that is so great. I'm just turning my phone off here. Excuse me.
Oh, certainly.
I was getting pings. I didn't want pings.
Oh,
No, that's so great.
and
That's
and it's a special way of breathing too, that I concentrate on a three-dimensional breathing where you sort of subdivide that into expanding the rib cage this way, expanding the rib cage because of course you have ribs at the back, front to back,
Mhm.
and then also vertically.
Oh, how
So you,
great.
so you feel, you feel the pelvic floor expand. You feel everything lengthen and broaden. And if you do that, if you put that awareness on all of that, you're ready.
Oh, that is wonderful. I love that.
Isn't it? I will take you through that exercise if you like it. It's really deliciously calming.
I love that. Yeah, I will definitely need that. I'll take you up on it.
Okay, well, this is a perfect segue into your music because you have also made more than several ascents on Denali.
Mhm.
And how do you say Algonquin?
Aconcagua.
Aconcagua. Would you talk about those a little bit? And that's going to lead right into Denali Pass and to your.
Great. Sure. Yeah, so this is interesting because we mentioned Pete Sears, so he's going to figure, he and his family are going to figure prominently. Excuse me, I thought I had my phone turned off, and it has turned itself back on.
That me?
Somehow. No, no, that pinging was me, and they're
Oh, good.
now it's finally off. So, I've always been a runner, and when I met Pete and his wife Stephanie, they were just getting into marathon running. So they just talked me into doing it, and so I ran my first marathon pretty much because they convinced me it would be a fun thing to do. And then after that, Pete proposed to Stephanie on the summit of Mount Rainier, I believe.
Oh my gosh.
And so, of course, I was really into that, and I thought mountain climbing. I mean, I've always climbed in the White Mountains. Let's take it to the next. And I'd done some climbing in the Sierras, Sierra Nevada, and this just seemed like Pete and Steph were doing it. Then I need to do it. And it's the Pacific Northwest, of course, is beautiful and has all these wonderful volcanoes you can climb, and Mount Rainier, Mount Hood. So I started with Rainier, got some training on glacial travel and cross rescue and all that good stuff. And then from Rainier, it was a step up with the same company to go to Denali, which we successfully summited, which was really exciting. A 3-week trip where you're at a pack and we're pulling sleds. It was really, yeah, it was a push, definitely. And then I did one last trip down to South America to do Aconcagua because it was the highest peak in this part of the hemisphere. So
How tall is that?
Aconcagua was 23,000 and change. So that was
Did you have oxygen with you?
no, the guides just take you up. You hike high, sleep low, so they move you up the mountain in increments that way. And you do get some altitude sickness. It strikes everybody differently at different times. But the guides, they really make sure that you're drinking lots of water and breathing and doing all that stuff. So,
I climbed, this was technical climbing, the Grand Teton in 1991. I know that because it
yeah.
was the same year I met my husband, right?
Ah, yes.
So I drove my truck from LA to Wyoming, where I was doing a jazz camp. I did the training, advanced training, and I technically climbed the Grand Teton, which is a 14,000-foot peak.
That is a tough climb.
But,
That's on my to-do list. Yeah.
oh yeah, it's a zenith, a peak experience. And Long's Peak, somebody that was also. But I have to tell you, it wasn't so bad climbing the Grand Teton, but the last 400 or 500 feet climbing up Long's Peak, I could barely breathe.
Yeah.
I was just trudging, inhaling. Is that the way we're breathing on Denali or Aconcagua?
Aconcagua.
Aconcagua, sorry.
Yeah, yeah, it's okay. Um, yeah, I mean, you were definitely it was definitely more shallow breaths and harder to breathe, and some altitude headaches. I don't think at any point I don't remember gasping for air. If you got to the point where you were gasping, the guides would sit you down and and have you rest. My funniest, and this is a quick story. My funniest altitude sickness story is I had one day and I had gotten a pass. I was really lucky at the last minute to climb up Mount Whitney in California, And so I virtually went up about as quickly as I possibly could, which of course is, not the best thing to do if you're trying to avoid altitude sickness. But I was fine. I was feeling great, and I started coming down, and I was great coming down at the top. And then as I got, I don't know, maybe half an hour down from the summit, I just thought I had the flu. And I didn't know enough about altitude sickness to realize exactly what was going on. But it had not hit me until I had actually started down. And so I just made my way down feeling just horrible. And as I got near the bottom, I was starting to feel a little bit better, but suddenly I thought I heard a bagpipe player. Wow, this is worse than I thought. This isn't just like flu. This is, I'm out of my mind. I must have gotten some, I don't know, peyote or something. Who knows? And so I kept on climbing down, and I rounded a corner, and sure enough, there was a bagpiper on this bridge celebrating sunset. So,
You thought you were delusional.
I absolutely did. Yeah, I thought I'd completely lost it.
Oh, that's just a great story. That is fantastic. Well, you have recorded, I love the fact that every album you make, and I have several of them, I don't have Momentum up here with me because it's in my pottery studio.
Oh, thank you.
But these are two of her wonderful records, Courage Records, Denali Pass. I actually sing on this record with you. Charlie sings on this record.
Charlie's tune is on Denali. Yep.
But they have such depth of spirit. It really is like you're a musical poet.
Wow, that's a nice.
And that didn't come from me. That came from one of your reviews, which I think it's absolutely true, though. You have every record has a giant purpose. Let's talk about Momentum first, if you don't mind, because it's such a timely project and such an important project. And then we'll play a piece from it. Talk about the dedications and.
Sure. Well, I think all these projects, I've never thought of myself, because I'm not, as one of the hippest players or composers or one of the cutting edge players or composers, and I've really struggled with that. And I think there's a lot of other women I know who've kind of struggled with that too. We think we need to be this certain type of player or artist in order to be relevant or meaningful. And this is actually giving me a chance to bring up my other little favorite quote, but it's one that's helped me tremendously, and it's an Irish poet, and I've been carrying this around with me for so long. It's taped together. It's all tattered.
I love that.
To me by a wonderful composer and conductor at the Eastman School of Music, Sidney Hodkinson. And it's James Stephens, an Irish novelist and poet. He says, originality does not consist of saying what no one has ever said before, but in saying exactly what you think yourself. Isn't that cool? Yeah,
Mama.
Yeah, therein is our permission to just write from the heart and not worry if it's not in 13/8 or it's not, an Afro-Cuban pop, funk, Latin, whatever. It's just what you yourself want to say. So that's, I think, the one thing that's allowed me to even record at all, because I didn't start recording until like 1998, I think, or 2000. And I didn't think I had anything worthwhile putting out on an album. I just didn't. Thick enough. So
I think it's really important that you say that for the younger people and maybe the students that are out there listening to this podcast or Zoom Live or whatever format we're on. Because, for example, I had a student that was working on a project for her class saying, I've got to find my voice. How do I find my voice? And we just slowed her down and said, you are your voice.
Oh, what a beautiful way to put it. You are
your voice. It is where it's supposed to be. Just occupy it, darling. Just occupy it. And of course, I remember back being that young, feeling so insecure and so laden with pressure to be more than I possibly could be.
Yeah.
I was supposed to be Ella Fitzgerald. Well, guess what? I never was, and I never will be.
But you are something so remarkably special because you're you, and that's
exactly right.
Ella Fitzgerald. We don't need another Ella Fitzgerald.
We've had her.
Yeah, and thank heavens we have her.
And this young student is so talented and remarkable, and she's got a big voice, and she's writing beautifully, and she's worried about all this, and she really did take that to heart and sort of calm it all down. Your style is who you are in the moment, and as you do more, just you grow into it. You can't escape it.
No, that's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's perfect.
Talk about the people that you gave tribute to on this record.
Sure. So the concept behind the album was that I wanted to honor women who had been important in my life. And, when people ask you about, your influences, I tend to always immediately go to, oh, they must be interested in my musical influences. And of course, there've been some wonderful female musical influences in my life. But the reality is that because there weren't that many women jazz players when I was growing up, and my influences really came from the pop and folk music world, the athletic world, and more recently from the social justice world, the political world, from a lot of different places. And these women that I was thinking about have inspired me just to be the strongest woman I can be. And it wasn't just about the music. So I wanted to honor a lot of these women. And so it was really fun to think through who were women who had mattered to me when I was growing up that I might not have really thought about in that way as being important to me. So that included people like Martina Navratilova and Billie Jean King, because I played tennis in high school. And man, they were so strong in their advocacy for women's rights, women's sports, lesbian rights, equal pay, the whole nine yards. And then I was thinking about somebody more recent. I was thinking about Michelle Obama, who is, of course, a hero to so many of us. Then I started thinking about the fact that there's so many heroines of the social justice movement that we don't really know about. We're starting to hear more about them now as the women's rights movement. We sort of realize that a lot of women of color have been left out of the discussion in the history of the suffragette movement. So, Fannie Lou Hamer and Mary Bethune Cook and Septima Clark and women like that. So there's a piece dedicated to them, a piece dedicated to Jerry Allen, which I think is the one that, and Mary Lou Williams, which I think we're going to play. A piece for my mother, who is a bird lover, as we've talked about some birds already. And then my running mentors, Joan Benoit Samuelson, who actually I sent her a copy of the record, and she sent me the nicest note, which I carry with me everywhere I go.
Love that.
Yeah, it was really special. Megan Arbogast is a 58-year-old, or maybe she's 59 now, ultra runner who still places in the top 10 in races at our age. It's just so inspiring. And Gunhild Swanson, who at age 70 finished the Western States 100 right in the last seconds that she was allowed to actually qualify as finishing. So athletes, people in politics. I know one that's not on the album is for all the female Supreme Court justices. That's a new one. And then, one other one I want to mention, which is really important to me, was Diane Fossey and Jane Goodall. I'm starting to panic here. Environmental activists who continue to be so important to all of us today. So yeah, I just wrote pieces for them. And Joni Mitchell is one for Joni Mitchell and Carlos.
Oh, yes. What a beautiful array of powerful women to inspire us. Inspire our young women and inspire everybody, let's face it.
Sure.
Let's play The Soul Keepers, which is dedicated to Mary Lou Williams.
Mm-hmm. And Jerry Allen.
And Jerry Allen.
And Mary Lou was a mentor to Jerry, so.
Love that.
Comes full circle.
And to hear the entire piece, you are just going to have to go on Ellen's website and purchase this beautiful record. It's a wonderful record.
Thank you, Sonny. Yeah, and I think Smoke and Sled Dog Records has it up on their website as well. I think we need to give a shout out to Jamie Sue Seal and Susan, who've been so great in supporting both of us. So,
Oh, absolutely. They have, what a wonderful collaborative spirit they have. I love working with them.
yes,
They, they're helping me with this concept for the show. They did all the beautiful PR. Whenever I'm in a quandary, they're right there. They're fantastic. Talk about community, right?
yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So let's go on, my dear, to the next record that I wanted to. Let's talk about courage music and the title and where this came from and about your sister a little bit.
Sure. So all my family, my siblings are all artistically inclined in some way, shape, or form. You know, one brother builds beautiful instruments and self-taught musician just plays 12-string guitar and basically can play any instrument you put in his hands. And my brother, one of my other brothers, is a great artist. He teaches as well right now. Another art brother who's no longer with us was a church organist and lectured at the Smithsonian on music history and a wonderful pianist and piano teacher and so forth and so on. My sister Judy, who's the oldest of my siblings, is a wonderfully accomplished poet and educator. And she's written some poems about jazz, she's written so many beautiful poems about so many different subjects, but one of the poems she wrote about jazz improvisation, and she called it courage music. And I thought that was such an amazing term to describe, you know, the courage it takes to jump in and make stuff up, you know, just in the spur of the moment. So that phrase really stuck with me, and I thought that it would be a nice way to, you know, pay tribute to her by naming the album after her phrase. But she's also, besides being an incredible poet and a teacher, she is a remarkable cancer survivor, and she was diagnosed with ovarian stage 3B, I think, ovarian cancer back about 24, 3, somewhere in there, years ago. And basically, you know, I was told that after the first surgery and it came back that, you know, she probably only had a year left to live. Well, it's come back a number of times, but she is still here. And then she got jaw cancer last year and has gone through 2 surgeries for that and radiation. And through it all, she's also the first person up out of her bed, moving her IV along and walking, and first person out of the hospital. And she's been running 4 miles a day up in Maine. It just remarkable. So courage music was, you know, I thought, of all the people who exemplify courage, I think she really does more so than anybody. So that's where the title for that particular album came from.
I'm a little speechless when I hear about Judy.
Mm-hmm.
Usually ovarian cancer is a death sentence.
Yeah.
And she has such fight and such courage
Mm-hmm.
that not only is she still how old is she? She's 70 something, isn't it?
75?
And she's running 4 miles a day.
Yes, she is.
That's my girl.
Yep.
Sonny, quit whining about mowing the lawn.
Yeah, there's a little lesson in there for all of us.
Just a little, perhaps, maybe. Well, let's see. We have. Oh, there's a Summit Dog here too. Isn't this about?
Oh, Summit Dog is about the Aconcagua hike.
That's right. I knew on one of the records you were talking. Oh, and here's a picture of Aconcagua.
Yep, there it is.
There it is.
Yeah.
I'd like to play a little bit of your piece for Robert Frost. It's in 2 sections, so we probably will only play one part. Do you have a preference?
Well, I think if we can start the first track, I'm wondering if it will just naturally flow into the second track, because one without the other doesn't make too much sense.
Okay, let me go ahead and do it. I want to apologize for the quality of sound. We haven't quite solved that issue yet. I hope it's coming across.
I just want, before you do that, Sonny, can I check one thing with you? Because that would make a difference in the sound. When you are in your audio settings, have you disabled the compression and the background noise? Because that can make a...
Yes.
You've done all that.
I've optimized all that.
Okay, all right. Never mind.
Thank you, though.
Yeah.
All right, so this is her tribute to Robert Frost and Miles to Go, Part 1. Ingrid Jensen.
Just vanished.
And we'll play just a touch of this one. This is And Miles to Go. Talk about joyful music, my friend. So uplifting,
Thank you.
right? Just beautiful. Beautiful, beautiful. Well, my dear, do you have anything else you would like to share with us? Projects, concerns? Oh, I know one thing. You did Marion McPartland's Piano Jazz.
Mm-hmm.
That was on NPR for years and years. And I just loved that. That show was iconic, really.
Yeah, it really was.
Talk about your time and her influence.
Sure. So Marion really was an important mentor and influence. I got to meet her at the Eastman School when I was a graduate student, and she was coming there as a guest artist, and my wonderful mentor Rayburn Wright made sure that I got to write a piece for her to play while she was there with the symphony orchestra, the studio orchestra. So we got to know each other there, and after I graduated, she started sending me projects to do, writing projects, arrangements, and then she had me transcribe a couple books of her performances from various solo piano concerts, so that they were available for people to play, note for note. And then the final, and then I guess I had two different chances to be on Piano Jazz, which was really, really special and very nerve-wracking. You walk in, you sit down, and there are the two pianos, and away you go. So not a whole lot of editing, or occasionally she'll go back and give you a shot to redo a tune, but for the most part, what you hear on those those Piano Jazz shows is exactly what happened at the moment. So
What an honor.
yeah, it was absolutely some of the biggest thrills of my life were being on that show and just getting to hang out with her. And she came across as a very prim and proper British lady, but she had a mouth on her.
That's good to know. That's always good to know.
Very funny, and very salty. So
Salty, good. Well, those British, they can have a little bit of salt under their skin.
yes, they can.
I love it. We were talking the other night about a gathering of people I don't think they were that young, maybe in their 40s, and they had no idea who Tony Randall was.
Oh, right.
And
Yeah.
then we were talking the other night at dinner about how the same thing is true with these, again, iconic comedians, Tommy and Dickie Smothers. Is that right? Tommy and Dickie Smothers? The Smothers Brothers.
Yeah.
You've got to tell us about that experience with the Smothers Brothers.
Well, I right after grad school, I think I stayed in Rochester for a year trying to make some money, and I moved to New York. And it was, I think, January, and I was running out of money, and I had very sensibly spent part of my last $10 that I had on a box of chocolate donuts. So my judgment was not exactly what it should be. And suddenly, out of the blue, this offer to go on a cruise ship came up, and it was the SS Norway, which was one of the biggest cruise ships, or maybe it was the biggest cruise ship at the time. And there was 50 musicians on board, most of them jazz players. And so I jumped at the chance and had this wonderful opportunity for 9 months to cruise in the Caribbean, and then we went across to Norway and went in and out the Norwegian fjords. And I learned a ton. I got to conduct somewhat questionable cabaret acts. I got to play in the big band. I played a lot of solo piano. I worked with singers. It was a really terrific experience. And they would have guest stars on each week. There would be a different guest star. And the Smothers Brothers were on several times, and they were just the musicians' favorite because, if you got to play their show, they were constantly making little asides to the band and just having a great time. And so I got to know both of them, and we actually one of my friends and I went shopping in Nassau in the Bahamas with Tommy Smothers to help him look for a bedspread or something for his mother. But he actually would come to some of the shows, like one of the shows I was conducting in a cabaret, in the cabaret rooms. I just remember one night he came there and heckled me from the back. That's my claim to fame. I should put it in my resume.
Oh, I think you should. I think you should.
Yeah.
That's great. That reminds me, this is a complete aside, but it reminds me of Martin Short's famous story that he's told on The Tonight Show, so I don't feel badly in relaying it, but he was on with Tony Bennett. And I'm going to make this very short. He was sort of shoved on stage following Tony Bennett. And he completely went up. He lost his timing. He sort of stuttered. He was blubbering. And after his not up to par show, he walks into the bathroom to splash water on his face and get a little breath. And in walks Tony Bennett, And Tony Bennett says, "You froze good, kid."
Nice.
Great story. Love it. Well, my dear friend, it has been such a joy to have you and to have this time together. Thank you so much for joining me.
Oh, thank you for having me. It's just, I knew it was going to be a delight, and I just so appreciate having the chance to chat with you and have it, go out wherever it's going out, and thank everybody who's checking it out for listening. And I had a great time.
Thank you. And thanks to Jamie Sue and to
Yes.
Susan O'Rourke and Sled Dog Records for all of their help on this. I'd also like to let you know a couple of things. And my helpful mentor friend, Kathy Siegel Garcia, has her show immediately following this, if you just go to her Facebook page. And she is interviewing jazz musicians from around the world. She's had on Kurt Elling and Diane Reeves and Bob Shepard and a myriad of folks. So if you can tune into her show, we're sort of promoting each other and taking care of each other. And also, I'd like to encourage you to attend the Vote Michigan rally. And if you want more information about that, you can get it at votemichiganrally.com. It's going to be September 12th. 2020 at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And I'm going to be singing on it. So,
Where is that rally, Sonny?
oh, that rally is, it's going to be not viral, virtual. It's a virtual rally. And there will be more information forthcoming on votemichiganrally.com. Meanwhile, I'm breaking my every 2 weeks pattern of shows because otherwise we would have 3 weeks in between. And next week on Monday, I am having the wonderful Lulu Fall, and her Seneca name is Ludgard Ndata Fall, multicultural person because she's been raised in both cultures. Beautiful singer. I can't wait to have her on. So I look forward to seeing you next week. And thank you again, Ellen,
Thank
so
you.
much. Mwah.
Happy-
Okay.